If we look at the current economic indicators, there is a rather harsh reality that we need to face. Honestly, interest rates are anchored at high levels, while the cost of living is rising day by day. The inevitable consequence is that any financial mistake, even very, very small ones, will be magnified many times over by this economic environment. It is like a gigantic magnifying glass. That is precisely why today we will dissect 9 spending structures that carry what is called a negative expected value. It may sound academic, but in reality they are everywhere, hidden behind a very perfect disguise of rationality, convenience, and safety. The issue is not how much money an individual spends, but the system. We are not judging the act of buying a $2 cup of coffee. What matters is that modern business models are designed and refined to perfection, to optimize the flow of money toward the seller entirely by design. When a person stands in front of a spending decision on the surface, it appears to be free will. But in reality, the entire context, the pricing structure, the sales pitch are psychological traps that have already been carefully set. Today, we will pierce through that outer shell to see clearly the incentives, the hidden financial motivations behind these systems, and from there reclaim control of our own wallets, instead of letting algorithms guide us. All right, let's begin with the first trap. A scenario that is extremely familiar at the checkout counter, buying an extended warranty. Anyone who goes to buy a new television or refrigerator knows this feeling. At the very moment the card is swiped, the salesperson will smile and say something like, "For just a little extra, the device will be covered by an additional 2 years of warranty." At first glance, it sounds like a very responsible choice. But when this system is placed on the scale of mathematics, the picture looks completely different. If we shine a purely probabilistic light onto that offer, the truth immediately reveals itself. Let's try to think in reverse for a moment. If extended warranties truly benefited the buyer, retailers would have gone bankrupt long ago. They would never sell a service in which they are certain to lose money. The structure of extended warranties carries a negative expected value. Mathematically speaking, the buyer is guaranteed to be at a disadvantage. What they are actually paying for is not replacement parts, but a feeling of reassurance. This mechanism fully exploits a weakness in behavioral psychology known as loss aversion, the tendency to hate losses. In other words, people fear losing something more than they enjoy gaining an equivalent reward. The fear of a device, breaking the fear of inconvenience. The fear of having to pay a large sum for repairs, all of it completely overwhelms logic. People willingly pay an unreasonable fee to purchase artificial peace of mind. The most notable highlight in the analysis of the document is the fundamental difference in mindset. The middle class often tends to buy fragmented protection. The television has a television warranty. The washing machine has a washing machine warranty. Meanwhile, those with sharper financial thinking solve this problem at a more macro level. They establish an emergency fund instead of distributing risk into the hands of retailers. If a device happens to break after the original warranty expires, they simply draw from that fund to handle it. Over the long term, the money saved is more than enough to cover a few rare incidents. This mindset of buying the illusion of safety flows very smoothly into the second trap, where what people buy is even more intangible logo inflation in the luxury goods industry. A harsh truth when stepping into a glamorous store, what is being traded is not material or craftsmanship, but a social signal. And if we analyze it through the lens of profit margins, the luxury goods industry operates in an entirely different space. Profit margins often fluctuate at astonishing levels 60 to 70%. Customers are paying for a message, an unspoken statement about social status. However, the harsh economic context has inadvertently exposed this paradox. As inflation erodes real income, a significant portion of people must resort to financial leverage, such as credit cards, just to own that logo. The consequence is that the streets are flooded with designer handbags, but their owners are bending over backwards to pay monthly interest. And precisely because of that, the logo itself has become inflated. It has lost its original function of distinguishing status. It resembles a theatrical performance in which all the actors are straining themselves, paying brutal interest rates just to buy recognition from strangers, people who may themselves be carrying a similar debt. And in a tightening economic cycle, it turns into a real financial burden. Speaking of subtle status symbols, smartphones cannot be left out. The question that arises is very practical. How much additional money has this year's newest phone actually helped you earn compared to last year? This is a wake-up question, especially when looking at the bigger picture of technological development. The hardware innovation curve has flattened a camera that is 10% better does not increase quality of life by 10%. Economics calls this marginal utility, the marginal value of use. Satisfaction declines sharply after the second year of use. Yet the marketing machine continues to push product release cycles every 12 months, because what they sell is no longer breakthrough functionality. What they sell is dopamine, the chemical that delivers a surge of excitement when peeling the plastic off a brand new device. That moment usually lasts only until the next month's credit card statement arrives. In other words, you're buying a short-term dose of dopamine instead of buying real performance. Fortunately, global data is showing a positive shift. Smartphone upgrade cycles are naturally stretching to 3 to 4 years. Consumers are beginning to calculate the ROI, return on investment. And the conclusion is becoming increasingly clear: pouring a pile of money just to scroll social media slightly more smoothly is obviously a terrible investment. This is when things become truly interesting, when we move to more silent expenses. Yet, the duo of traps that devastate finances, the most recurring service subscriptions combined with impulsive shopping. Automatic charges for gym memberships. Netflix online learning apps. What is the dark secret of the subscription model? It is built on a core assumption that customers will not fully use the capacity of the service, or ideally will forget that they are even paying for it. If all gym members showed up at 6 p.m., the gym would collapse from overload. This model survives thanks to people who pay for an entire year, but only show up for a few sessions. The psychology behind this is truly ironic. People are not paying for who they actually are. They are paying for an idealized version of themselves. An imaginary person full of discipline waking up at 5 a.m. to lift weights. But in real life, that person prefers to stay under the blanket, scrolling on their phone. The money continues to automatically leave the account without the immediate pain of handing over cash. This leakage happens silently, and it becomes amplified when combined with the trap of impulsive shopping. We are living in an era where algorithms understand the dopamine loop more deeply than humans themselves. Personalized advertisements combined with countdown discount codes trigger FOMO. You think pressing the order button is freedom, but in reality, it is the final step in a perfectly designed process of psychological manipulation. Each decision may only be a few dozen or a few 100,000 dong, but 5 to 10 such decisions per month will evaporate an entire long-term savings rate. The digital economy is optimizing the extraction of money from human indiscipline and loss of control. If small purchases slowly drain resources, then one devastating strike is buying a brand new car when it is not truly necessary. The feeling of receiving a new car is very proud, but the instant the wheels roll out of the showroom, that asset immediately evaporates 15% to 25% of its value. The buyer throws themselves into a race, that already starts several tens of thousands of dollars in the negative right from the starting line. Especially in the high interest rate environment of 2026, the accumulated borrowing costs combined with the rate of depreciation turn the car into a money-burning machine. This is more of an emotional desire than an economic calculation. So, if evaluated through the lens of risk and reward, what is the smartest move buying a used car that is about 2 to 3 years old? The first owners have already absorbed the most brutal phase of depreciation, while a 3-year-old car is still in nearly perfect technical condition. Buying a lightly used car is essentially letting someone else pay for the depreciation while you enjoy the core utility value. What does all of this mean when we shift our perspective toward more long-term issues? Because there are invisible, wealth-crushing machines, a typical example being the trap of high-fee investment products. Take this example, a fund management fee of 2% per year. The number 2% sounds as light as a feather. The market goes up 10%, you pay 2% for the effort, keep 8%, and it sounds reasonable. But long-term mathematics does not work according to such simple subtraction. This is exactly where the concept of reverse compounding exerts its destructive power. It tears away at an investor's wealth year after year, silently and relentlessly. A 2% fee deducted consistently year after year for 35 years will erode 30% to 40% of the total accumulated wealth. Nearly half of the achievements of an entire lifetime evaporating simply because of a seemingly harmless number of 2%. Truly terrifying. The discussion once again returns to the key word incentive motivation. Distribution systems or advisors often receive commissions at the very moment the buyer signs the contract. Their incentive is to sell the highest fee products in order to maximize personal commissions completely misaligned with the long-term interests of the investor. History has proven that low-cost passive index funds almost always outperform expensive, actively managed funds. Ironically, people rarely lose money because they are defeated by the market, but a large portion collapse because the fee structure drains them from the inside, a silent extraction strategy. And that is precisely the philosophy behind the final group of traps, hidden fees, and convenience taxes in food delivery. This structure never scares customers with a massive number from the beginning. A dish on the app appears quite reasonable, but once it moves to the checkout screen, a matrix appears: service fee, processing fee, delivery fee, bad weather fee, peak hour fee. Each one adds only a little. The buyer shrugs and thinks, well, it's already ordered a few thousand more, won't matter. But the platforms are watching two life or death metrics: RPU revenue per user and LTV customer lifetime value. They squeeze LTV using the boiling frog method, slicing the cost into countless tiny cuts. A meal with a base price of $5 becomes $6 on the app. Then, with hidden fees, it becomes $8.5. The cost rises by 70%. If occasionally on a rainy day, paying extra to save 30 minutes makes sense. But when it becomes a habit, 20 days a month, its nature changes completely. The document bluntly calls this a type of tax imposed on a lack of discipline. Anyone too lazy to cook is automatically taxed by the system. This raises an important question as a conclusion to the entire picture we examined today. The survival task in 2026 is not to grind endlessly to earn more money. It is to decode the structural framework hidden behind consumer behavior. Do not stop at the question, is this product good? Continuously ask 3 questions before opening your wallet. First, which organization truly benefits the most if this transaction happens? Second, which side does the mathematical probability favor the buyer or the selling system? And finally, Is this transaction delivering real value? Or are you simply throwing money to fund someone else's extraction-based business model? The capitalist system does not maliciously intend to make anyone poor. It is simply a machine optimized to drain resources from those who stop thinking and analyzing. Asking questions and challenging assumptions is the strongest barrier to regain control. Before closing today's analysis, there is one thought-provoking idea worth considering about a future scenario. If algorithms and business models have evolved to an extreme level of sophistication, understanding dopamine and exploiting loss, aversion to maximize profit extraction, then human self-discipline alone may not be able to resist them. In the near future, will we be forced to equip ourselves with personal AI assistants acting like financial lawyers standing by 24/7, automatically analyzing the mathematical expectation of every sales pitch, dissecting chains of hidden fees, and bluntly blocking impulsive purchases before the money even leaves the account? A proxy war between AI optimizing profits for megacorporations and defensive AI protecting the personal finances of individuals. Perhaps this is inevitable, and it will certainly be a fascinating scenario to watch unfold. Thank you very much for accompanying this analysis today. See you again in future deep dive discussions.